Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I know we're covering a lot of time zones, but yeah, thanks for joining. So my name is Madison Moore, or Maddie, and I graduated from Woodstock in 2012, along with Tanya Garg, who's also here with us. And so tonight we're going to be talking about the Alumni Artist Residency program that started. We had the very first one this spring in May on campus. And so we're really excited to share kind of the emotional experience of returning to Woodstock, as well as the creative output and our interactions with the broader school community and Missouri community. So I'll go ahead and start sharing we have a presentation for all of you. If you can't hear me, just let me know as I pull this up. 1 second. Okay, can you guys hear me now? If someone could just say on their microphone, because I can't see
Yes.
Okay, you're good. Awesome. So yeah, as I mentioned, we had this artist residency program. In the course of this hour, we'll be talking about the purpose of the program, what the aims were. There were a lot of different departments of the school who were involved. Also, the alumni network was really critical. So we'll look at how that all came together to create such a successful program. And then eventually we'll get into the artwork that was created and have a discussion with some of the other artists who participated, just in terms of what it was like to be back on campus and what their takeaways were. So to begin, Jamie, I'll be handing this over to you so that you can talk about kind of how this came together on the school side.
Sure. Thanks, Maddie. Hi, everybody. And it's so great to see the artists again. It's been a while since I saw your faces. So really great to see you guys. We still have so much of the art up in the CFI building. And I think about you every day when I'm there. It's my privilege to give some comments on how this residency began. The idea was really born from the Alumni Artist Affinity Group. And this whole project is a testament to how these affinity groups can create real, tangible ways to integrate alumni with the life of Woodstock today. The idea really started to take shape when Stefan approached me to discuss the possibility of an alumni artist residency at Woodstock. And so together we looked at the CFI building. It was still brand new. I mean, brand new. Because of the pandemic, the students hadn't really even been in the building very much. So we looked at the space together with a view toward providing a hub for studio creation, discussion space, the sort of day-to-day work of the residency, but also an exhibition space, a space that would be really beautiful and conducive to showing the artistic work that was produced by the residents at this residency. We decided it was a perfect space.
Oh, Jamie, I think we lost you for a second. Darn, maybe we'll give her another moment to. Oh, there we go. Sorry, Jamie, we lost you for a second when you were talking about CFI. So yeah, if you could just give us the last couple sentences. Thanks.
Yes. I just wanted to mention that it was really a great way to inaugurate the building, because again, we hadn't had any major programs there yet. And so having this residency as a time where there was reflection, there was thinking really deeply about what Woodstock is, its identity, and then expressing that in different artistic forms was a beautiful way to sort of inaugurate the building. And it was an ideal collaboration between the Center for Imagination, Alumni, and Woodstock School, bringing together all of those groups. The CFI seeks to be a multi-generational meeting space for alumni, for staff, students, parents, to come together and share their passions. So it really was just the perfect program for that. So I think I'll leave it there. I know our next speakers will say something about more specifically about the objectives of the program. So thanks, Maddie, for letting me introduce that.
Great, thanks, Jamie. I really appreciate it. So next we have Katie Jo and Addie, who will be talking about the purpose behind the program. They're both working on the alumni side. So yeah, Katie Jo and/or Addie, we're looking forward to hearing some of those conversations that you guys had before, yeah, to get this program started.
I can jump in very quickly and mention Jamie already mentioned the role of the Artist Affinity Group, which came into being last year through this virtual reunion. There was a panel of artists who got together and kind of liked that idea and went on to kind of meet again and again. And through those meetings, this idea of what do we do? How do we come back to Woodstock or like reconnect with Woodstock? And the idea of residency came about, and that was just how this idea of residency to come back to Woodstock, bring in whatever skills and talent the artists have, and also create it as an opportunity to reconnect with school, and not just with school, but to also connect with the locals in Missouri. So this is all in a nutshell what was the purpose of residency and how it came in being. Ms. Katie Jo.
Yeah, so this was something really exciting that came out of last year's digital reunion, virtual reunion from the Artist Affinity Group, coming into this and really opened our eyes to how our alumni community can connect.
Participants 50. Participants 51.
Okay. So again, I was just speaking about the affinity group in general, being the catalyst for this and for it being a really exciting thing for us to explore how we can connect alumni not only across geographic areas, but across interest areas. And Sharon-Sito was really key in bringing this together last year with Addie, and it's something that we're exploring in other areas. But this Artist Alumni Affinity Group is really something that kind of took on a life of its own and culminated in this beautiful project that really started before I joined Woodstock in mid-February. So when I did join, I think just a few days prior to my joining on February 12th is when we opened applications for the program. And, as Addie said, there were basically three main points that they were saying that were the goals of the program that we were doing. So it was to reconnect alumni with Woodstock, Missouri in the Himalayas, and to facilitate meaningful community and creative exchange and output for alumni artists, and to engage the Woodstock community with processes involved in the art production and exhibition to bring context to the Woodstock IB education and enrich the greater community of lifelong learners. So this is really key to what we're trying to do in the alumni office and at CFI is to bring in alumni, bring in people from the community to engage with students, and for the students then to engage with them as well for our lifelong learning community for mutual learning. So that was incredibly exciting. So I joined and after a few weeks, got together with my collaborators in the art department and at CFI, and we reviewed these incredible applications from our alumni from all over the world and their incredible portfolios of work. And we made the difficult decision of choosing who our artists and residents would be. And so we really strove to seek diversity in that cohort to see what we could really what could come of bouncing those really diverse ideas and backgrounds off of each other and off of Woodstock in totally different contexts based on where those people were in their lives and in their work. So what ended up coming of that was that we had chosen 4 artists from India and 4 from the rest of the world to come who are working in a variety of art forms and across a great span of different graduation years. And one thing I do want to mention too, I'm going to hand this off to Stefan to then go into who these selected people were and this amazing experience that came out of that, achieving these goals that I just laid out for you. But I do want to mention, since this is the FWS reunion, that FWS also contributed to this residency and helped us to make it possible and helped us to keep our Artists in Residence fund intact so that we can continue to fund these opportunities in the future. So yeah, I will hand it over from here to Stefan to take us further into this journey and see what our amazing artists accomplished while they were here.
Great. The next slide, please. Excellent. So just kind of giving a snapshot of what it was and how it was. As Katie Jo mentioned, we had 7 selected artists, and we're very intentional to try to get a range of generations. And we had, in fact, the outcome was, I believe, 48 years between the graduating classes of the oldest and the youngest participant, the youngest being just somebody who graduated last year. But it was a 3-week experience, and the 3-week residency ended in an exhibition. And if we can get the next slide. Oh, sorry, I'll just back up just a bit. Sorry about that, Maddie. Okay, so I'll give it just a couple of, flesh these out a bit. It started with with quarantine and a mini, there we go. Yeah, that's, if I can just go over this. The first week, the 3 weeks were roughly split into these different parts, but the initial part experience was quarantine and connecting together as a result of being quarantined away from the rest of the school community. An initial hike that gave people this intense kind of a re-engagement with the physical aspect of being back in Missouri. And then out of that, connecting with each other across these generations and reconnecting, the artists went into the actual residency itself, taking over the CFI and setting up studio spaces there. One of the big engines of this was this idea that art makes sense of things. And so the intentionality of bringing artists back to Missouri was not just for artists revisiting their memories, but being able to make sense of and making sense of the past, but also making sense of the present and even the direction that the school is going or wants to head. And so we had inputs from the administration on the 5-year strategic plan. We talked about the issues of identity and this question of who we are and how do we make sense of who we are. Then leading into actual interactions with the school itself. And we had students popping in, we had curated engagements with the students. We had a screenwriting workshop and art students coming in and interviewing artists. And then out of this experience of drawing in inputs and connecting and engaging with the environment, the artists worked out their ideas, their reflections, they're making sense, of course, in terms of the actual artwork. And that was then shared with the 3 different groups of people with a final exhibition. And there'll be images of all of this.
Great. So yeah, as Stefan mentioned, there was a lot of great documentation of this. So keeping that itinerary that he just described in mind, we sort of have a little slideshow with captioned images, but there are a lot of photos to keep track of. So the main idea is just to kind of give you a sense of like a day in the life, what we were experiencing, both in terms of our engagements with each other, especially during that quarantine period, as well as with the rest of the student body and the larger community. So I'll just go through those slides and feel free to just kind of soak it in, see it kind of as we did.
Yes.
Is it possible to get commentary from Chris or someone else on these pictures?
For sure. Yeah, if people want to jump in, I can. So this, what you're seeing now, we've kind of reached the exhibition point. So there was a ribbon cutting ceremony because the exhibition tied in with the opening of this beautiful Center for Imagination. So this Mr. Mark getting to cut the ribbon, and I believe this was from the exhibition that we opened up to the larger Missouri community. So it was great to see people from town and other parts of the Hillside. And then this is, yeah, also from the exhibition. So you can see hints of how the art was presented. We had filled the entire building with artwork. But yeah, this was a great chance for us to engage with the community. And we had students from Weinberg Allen. They were asking great questions, really engaging with the artwork. There in the photo, we actually have Josh and Shubhashish, who are two of the residents. And then another one of our exhibition days was primarily for Woodstock alumni. So it was great to see former students come back to the school. And on that day, we had this panel discussion, which is what you see in this photo, where we got to kind of take a moment to reflect with each other. And we had a great Q&A panel. So it was awesome, again, to see alumni returning to school. And yeah, they had a lot of questions about the work and the experience. So this is most of the group. We had, I believe, Josh, I don't see him here. He had to leave early, but this includes, I believe, all the other residents and people who were essential to making it happen. And then the departure from Woodstock was, as we'll get into, it was definitely an emotional time saying goodbye, because I think, yeah, returning to the Hillside was personally a very, valuable experience. So before we dive into the exhibition piece, I do want to just go back real quick through all of these images, because I'd like to introduce all of the artists who were involved. So quickly, there we go. So just a few words about the people who were actually selected to participate, and you'll hear from many of them directly in a moment. But we had Chris, who many of you know, Chris Green, from the class of 1990, who works in many media forms, and he'll be talking about that. We had Josh, who, can someone tell me which class Josh graduated in?
It says 98.
98. Okay, great. And he's a painter, very talented painter. My name again is Maddie Moore. I primarily work in film, and I'm from the class of 2012. Sam, multimedia artist, correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, Sam also works with some really cool different media forms. Class of 2004, but attended Woodstock earlier than that. Shubhashish, a filmmaker who ended up branching out into other media forms during the residency. Class of 09, great. And then we had Stuart from the class of 78, primarily a photographer these days, although kind of a lifelong artist working in many forms. And then we have Tanya Garg, class of 2012, who's a multidisciplinary artist who is a fantastic painter, but works in other forms as well. So now that you've had a bit more of an introduction to who was there, yeah, I would just want to emphasize again that these are people of all ages, different media forms, and that was really valuable from a creative standpoint and just in terms of getting to know these people. So now we'll return. I'm going to flip all the way back through to the exhibition, and we'll get to hear about, what people actually created. So we were in the beautiful new Center for Imagination. We were working there both as that served as our studio space as well as the exhibition hall, and it was, yeah, just a gorgeous, very inspiring place to be in with some great views of the campus and of Missouri. And then I'll go ahead and hand it over to the different artists so that they can actually speak about what they created. So Chris, you're up first, and yeah, we're excited to hear about what you made.
Yeah, thank you. So again, Chris Green, class of 90. And I was on the Hillside. I had some specific ideas of things I wanted to work on while I was there. And one was a small book project, and I had some illustration ideas. So I was doing a couple of things at the same time. But then one day I looked over on the floor and there was this big plastic
Unmute
bag.
my audio Zoom
We wish we
meeting.
could be in person, of course, to see you. And we look forward to future days when we'll be able.
We've got some competing audio. Thank you. So I looked over on the floor and there was a group of 3 6th graders had been on a field trip on the Hillside and had pulled
My audio
some vines
Unmute
down.
my audio button.
I'm sorry, Eugene Erickson, thank you. So there's this, you can see in the upper left corner, there's a photo of these vines coiled into a bag. And it was sort of left there like, well, we want to do a project with this vine, but it's end of the year and we're not sure what to do with it. So I reached out to them, Navya, Kshitij, and Kimaya. There's 3 6th graders who had pulled this vine down, thinking that it was an invasive species and wanted to sort of create a project about invasive species on the Hillside. So I decided, well, let's try to do something. And towards the end, we realized actually that there was a debate happening on the Hillside with this vine between 2 scientific minds. And I won't get into the full details, but it's sort of like, well, is this vine invasive? It's native, but is it invasive? And what do we do? And how do we manage the forest with this vine, which can kind of take over trees? So this vine that was already pulled, we thought, let's just go ahead and use it as an art piece, as a material for discussion. And Mr. Stefan Eicher and I got together just prior to the exhibition and decided to install it here, sort of in the, what I'm calling the oculus, sort of the open mezzanine area of the CFI. And as you can see in the photo on the far right, it's sort of just suspended. There's some lines that run from banister to banister so that the vine is suspended in midair. Like we were joking, like it looks like the Great Indian Rope trick. I don't know if you know that trick, but it's this is what happens. The rope goes up and sort of freezes in midair. But Stefan took time to create this pattern on the floor, and we thought it would be an interesting discussion to talk about ecology, but also intentionality with making work, and also to think what's it like to fill this space, this beautiful space, with something that you enter and you're given a presence of something. So this is what I'm featuring, is this vine Tetrastigma obtectum, which is the so I think the debate is continuing, like what to do with this particular vine, but this is something that was very exciting to me.
Thanks so much, Chris. Yeah, I think that your work was so representative of the experience of trying to kind of process being on the Hillside and using that for inspiration. And then yeah, I mean, I think these photos do a nice job of capturing just how well you use this space too. So now we'll hear from Tanya about what she created for the exhibition. Another fun one.
Hi, I'm Tanya. I'm the class of 2012. In my work, Woodstock has always been the point of reference. And now that I was back again, I didn't know how to reference the reference. And Chris actually suggested that I look up toy theaters, and Mr. Nandu, the art teacher, he had like an old paint Bukhari in the art room. And it became a way for me to step out and investigate my brain. And it's kind of a product of lamenting about like my Woodstock, with like the old Parker Hall curtains, and like just how to live with it. Like all my dreams, no matter what they're about, Woodstock always falls into them. Like I can be in New York and I'll feel like I'm like still living in Edgeo, and I'll see it in my dream. And so I wanted to make a dreamlike space with cozy furnishings and sort of guarded with stinging nettle. The phrase written on the tombstone, or like the / headboard of the bed, is something I really hated hearing. Make your bed and lie in it. The idea that you have to live with the consequences of the choices that you make. And I think it's like my way of reckoning with feeling displaced or lost, and placing it inside this Bukhari where I can visit whenever I want. The Bukhari itself, it's like a remnant of the past, because like a lot of the classrooms don't have them anymore. And it became a way to honor my personal history and heal and be comforted, knowing that even though the school has changed, my version still exists inside like this tangible vessel of like my memory. And that's
Great. Thank you for that, Tana. Really wonderful to see your work again. Next, we have Shubhashish. So as I mentioned, this is a very professional, talented filmmaker who took the opportunity to kind of branch out into some other media forms. So Shubhi, I'll hand it over to you.
Hello, everybody. So nice to be here. And I actually, it's funny how much Woodstock has made an impact in my life, because I also ended up making a film that was based on a story that takes place about a teacher in Woodstock during activity week. So when I came back for this artist residency, I was really sure that I didn't want to make a movie in order to not be able to do a bad job at that. But yeah, I think Woodstock was kind of this place for me when I came back for this residency, where it was, even though as much as I wanted to resist it before getting there, it ended up opening a can of worms of memories, and then kind of dealing with it either required art or therapy, or art therapy maybe, I don't know. So I kind of went into this zone where I wanted to find a way to let's say physicalize some ideas that I was having during the time. And I wanted to do this thing. One was the cloud jar. So my earliest memory of Missouri was the first time I was ever coming up there was when my uncle told me that we're going to a place in the mountains and it's in the clouds. So as a child, I remember this idea, this feeling of, and I actually ended up doing it, was taking like a jar and trying to capture a cloud. And this memory kept coming back to me over our conversations, and what it feels like to even have a memory, not to even know like how a memory kind of feels like a cloud, whether it's real, whether it's not real, whether we're, kind of designing a memory, a narrative as we go along. And so I kind of created this jar where I actually did the exercise again 20, 25 years later than when I first experienced it, where I went on the chucker and we went and we tried to capture a cloud in a jar and trap it. And it kind of felt a lot like capturing the time that we're keep trying to revisit. So that's one of the projects that I did. So that was something conceptual, something I've never done before. And the other thing that I did, which you can see on the right, I mean, I did 2 or 3 other things, but the other thing that we did on the right was this idea of, actually it was while we all went one day to Char Dukan and we were eating Maggie and YY. And I think these were products that, these were things that I personally only ever eat in Missouri. And it made me start to think about how products are a commodity in our memories, how they kind of relate to our memories, how capitalism and brands, how much of a strong force they have in us, trying to kind of connect to things, and at the same time, and also kind of provide us comfort. And so I try to go out and make kind of what do you call it, a mobile, yeah, a baby's mobile, where I try to collect all the items that remind me of Mussoorie, and especially in a scenario where things that kind of bond us, whether it's like chocolate or YY Maggie noodles, whatever, but how they kind of provide a source of comfort, but also a way where they yeah, about how they kind of bind us together. So this was something I've never done in my life, and I don't know if I was any good at it, but I think it was, like I said, a form of expression, a new form of expression I found. And yeah, I kind of, it was a really important experience for me to have. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Shubhi. Next we have Sam. So let me pull up your exhibition. Great. Sam, over to you.
Sorry, mic was off. Hi guys, Sam, class of 2004. Stefan, I really liked what you said about art sort of being a, let's say, a way or a means of making sense of the world. And I feel like quite a few of us were doing that, using it, like Shubi, like you said, maybe in a therapeutic way, or Tanya kind of sort of dredging through memories. And I feel like naturally we sort of had a lot of these great conversations about memory, about sort of the Hillside and how we remember it, about Woodstock, past and present. And I found in my experience, sort of not being at Woodstock, that the longer I was away, the more the Hillside and the school kind of being something that holds so much gravity in my memory, and probably in all of our memories, it sort of morphs into this charged kind of icon, maybe like something that's almost like a mythical realm. I think Tanya once used the word, it's like there was like pixie dust in the air, something like that. And that's kind of how it felt. It was like this bizarre thing that was being confronted with it, and then also experiencing how much it had changed. I feel like that was a very recurring theme. And so in my art and my practice is also kind of this means of inquiry, of trying to make sense. I kind of honed in on the impermanence aspect of sort of both the place, its transience, and the impermanence of our memory, and how that kind of evolves and morphs. And so one thing that I did, and it's kind of, you can see it at the bottom left, and it was kind of shown in a day in the life little things. I had this, I selected a picture that was sort of a very iconic memory for me coming to Woodstock. And it's a picture of my father and I, who was a teacher at the time, sitting in the plane to India, and sort of by using a solar printing technique, so dyeing fabric with haldi. And by the way, that's reclaimed textile from like the hospitality department, so it's something that's had its history in Woodstock as well, and it's sort of little stains and its personality. And I exposed an image of that moment onto this cloth, so sort of onto the tapestry of memory, let's say, and the sun kind of bleached it, and then I sort of fixed it, and it ends up being almost not visible, and it's this very sort of gazy, ghostly, just barely there, this like vestigial little obscure imprint that you can only kind of make sense of if you know what you're looking for. And I kind of like to get into these processes, so that's something I really enjoy. And the top left is another thing that went into a similar vein, which is basically also a decaying of an image. And I chose an archival photograph from the 1860s by a photographer named Samuel Bourne, who that's a picture of, it's hard to make out, I think, in that size, but that's a picture of of Camel's Back up in Missouri, and I sort of came up with this printing process where very gradually over the course of time, the image that is printed diffuses and kind of decays from being a very concrete photograph to being something that's very sort of watercolory diffuse. And so sort of going from left to right, each of those iterations is the same image printed, but sort of growing more and more faint and sort of entering this very pastel-y, watercolory, soft focus realm. And the third thing that you can kind of see on the floor in the right image is just sort of a bunch of objets trouvés. I was I spent a lot of time during quarantine by myself, walking the hillside. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I did. And I was coming across these objects, just basically artifacts that had this very sort of ephemeral, very evocative, almost aura, I would say. And a lot of them were just objects that kind of their usefulness or their place in human life had kind of lain in the past. So like prayer flags that had fallen to the ground and were faded and you can't make out the prayers. And I kind of took these objects and kind of in a curatorial way, just sort of laid them out and sort of was in the presence of their energy, I'd say. And so like Tanya also was saying, there's sort of this going through memories and going through the past and kind of this coming to terms with maybe things that are lost, that are in a state of flux, in a state of change. Yeah, and so, sorry, to cut things short, what you see there is not a let's say a conclusive finished piece, but it's all sort of just a snapshot of something that is in process of an ongoing investigation, I would say. Thanks. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Sam. Yeah, I think you touched on a lot of things that we were probably all experiencing in the course of this. So next I'll talk about my work. Sorry for the text. I won't read all of that off, but yeah, so I'm a filmmaker, and when I arrived at Woodstock, I was a little lost. I had no idea kind of where to get started. And so initially I began by just going around the Bazaar, Missouri, just with my iPhone, because the nice camera that Isaac had so kindly helped me to get, it wasn't working right off the bat. So I just started exploring with my iPhone and getting to know the town again, because I think there were things that I noticed that I think had just kind of changed naturally over time in the 10 years since I'd graduated. But also coming out of COVID lockdowns and things, it was clear that the town had been really affected by the pandemic. And some of that is also that there's more domestic tourism. People can't leave. And so there were a lot of people going on holiday up to the mountains. So I was kind of trying to process this and decided to just film the things that stuck out to me and the things that I appreciated or had remembered about the town. And so that became kind of a bit of an exercise, but also a fun little piece to make. And so that was my first film. It kind of served to get the gears turning and just, yeah, reconnect with the Bazaar. And then after that, once I had sort of become reacquainted with town a little bit, I spent the rest of my time with Mr. Vinod Kumar and his daughter Surbi Agarwal. And they run this antique shop right near the clock tower that many of you may be familiar with. They've run it for decades. And yeah, their family they're some of the longest residents in Missouri. So they've seen the town change a lot over the years. And since that was something that I was trying to understand just in the 10 years since I graduated, I figured that they would, they've seen a lot more and they would be able to tell me kind of their observations. So For the exhibition, I showed one film about the daughter and one film about her father, Vinod. And I think, you know, these projects may be expanded over time. I had a lot of footage, but yeah, in terms of what I could show for the exhibition, it was really just these snippets of really incredible conversations about, you know, Vinod talked about what it was like to live in Missouri as the British were leaving. And part of the way that he started his antique shop was really that they were leaving all their belongings behind. And so he had never been trained, hadn't really finished school. I think he dropped out when he was 10, but just his experience of kind of being in that place really exposed him to treasures. And now he's become this famous antique seller in India. I know people whose their parents and grandparents they'll travel from Punjab to go and visit his shop. So those are the projects that I worked on. I think it was a really very rewarding opportunity to be able to connect with these residents, Missouri residents, and with the town, to be able to explore it myself, but also kind of try to see it from their eyes. So it was a phenomenal experience. It felt, you know, too short, but yeah, it was wonderful. So now we have one more slide from another artist, Josh, who I don't think was able to attend. So I just wanted to share his work because as you can see, he's a very talented painter. And yeah, if you ever want to reach out to him, he has a really fascinating process in terms of like he paints and also incorporates fire and cutting the canvas and interacting with it in some really interesting ways. So just wanted to share that. And we also had Stuart with us, who is a very talented photographer. So you'll see his work too, because now that we've kind of introduced ourselves and our work, again, I'll just kind of offer a bit of a slideshow to highlight the exhibition that resulted. You know, you get to see the beautiful CFI building again. And then once we've shown some images from the exhibition, then we'll have a little bit of an artist discussion and Q&A. So yeah, very happy to hear from you all. So
Oh, Maddie,
Sorry,
I was just going to ask, I have a photo of the little description that Joshua had posted about this piece. Do you want me to read it off for everybody?
Sure, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, so it's called Tiger on the Threshold, and the statement he's posted next to the piece said, Woodstock is a profoundly intense creature. Everyone from the past, present, and all who will come ensure that it cannot be fully tamed. This tiger with its evolving multicolored stripes stands upon the lyre tree stump. The burnt parts are the inevitable losses as people leave, times change, and as old trees fall. Yet the delicate thread keeps us connected as we anticipate the tiger's next move.
Thank you so much for that, Katie Jo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad that we could share some of Josh's words about his work. So here's the CFI. This is the ground floor, and you can see the vine that Chris described, as well as some other artwork from Josh and Isaac, who's also with us, and did a fantastic job of running the program. The vine again. This was a really fascinating work that Chris created. He made a number of items. Here's Tanya's Bukhari. Here's Sam's work. And this is some of Stuart's. He used his photography to create a video piece. And here are some of his other photographs. Here's another piece by Chris. And more from Chris.
Sorry.
This is one of my films about Surbhi Agarwal. Josh's painting. Isaac's painting. Here's the outside of the CFI. There were some outside works. Mr. Nandu created this. And yeah, you can, beautiful view. The rain really helped while we were there. We had two really great interns. I should have spotlighted them. This is one of their works. The artist is named Kezia. And Stefan, I believe this is yours. Great. So now it's time for more of a discussion. I'm excited to hear from some of the other artists we have with us. Oh, it looks like there's a question about what CFI stands for. Yeah, Center for Imagination. So it's this beautiful new building that they've erected on campus. So we have some discussion questions, and as I said, we're also excited to have some Q&A and hear what some of our other attendees have to say or questions they have to ask. But just to begin, since I would say, especially during the quarantine process, there was a lot of reflection about just what it meant to return to Woodstock, either as an alumnus or as an artist or both. So I'll just kind of open that up to the other artists that are here with us to see kind of how you would describe to the rest of the group what it felt like to return to Woodstock. Chris, how did it feel for you?
I was like, where to begin? I mean, I'd been back in 2010, so it wasn't such a full-blown experience of newness, but you know, catching up with the school and where it is currently. Of course, the first thing you do is you look for what you recognize and your sort of the creature comforts of all that in your memory. But really, the most startling thing about this return was meeting this cohort of artists. I had actually met Tanya. We figured it out later. We met in New York and had exchanged numbers and everything, and just didn't follow up. And that's on me. But so everybody else was new to me, and I just felt really blessed to be able to connect with other students outside of my class, for example. Reunions are good for that in general. But this particular cohort represented a range of memories where we knew the same people. So there was just you know, an enormous amount of storytelling and comparative stories, and that inevitably brings up sort of the emotional warmth and power of memory and where you are right now. So I don't think I realized how impactful this whole experience was until after I got back to the States and was in sort of normal life. And it took a while to recover. So that was just a note that I had to make for myself. But the art making process, I mean, I have a studio, I'm making work all the time. Working in this way was more intensive, where we're all in the same room and we're encouraged to cross-pollinate, we're having conversations, we're literally interrupting each other. And it was just a very different way of working, and I love that. It pulled me out of my comfort zone. It put me in a place where we're you know, moving through ideas more quickly, and you're being more agile, and you're also really wanting to connect with the school. So having students come and drift by and just like, what are you working on? And it wasn't an interruption. Everything sort of filtered into the work process. And of course, as I said, with Divine, these three students who came and talked to me, it became a very interesting moment to lead them through the process of understanding that two adults, two scientific minds, adult minds, can disagree on something. And that really felt meaningful to me, to not just be making work like this is my expression, but kind of like to dig into something and to be a part of a conversation and help visualize that in some way. So that's all I'll say for now.
Thanks, Chris. Tanya, I'm curious to hear, or unless, do any of you have other, like the other artists, do you have other comments on that first question about just the experience of returning to Woodstock?
I would love to hear from, sorry.
So I'll just make one quick comment, and then Rajiv, we'll get back to you. But just to piggyback on what Chris was saying, that one of the profound things that I don't know how much we've been able to bring out here so far, is that the artwork and these conversations that arts has, not just with each other, but with the community, was really brought a sense of perspective and focus on questions that me being a current art teacher here, we as a community have been talking through and wrestling with. And I just wanted to highlight the vine. And Chris, just to add to what Chris was saying, and this is where Chris's work was applied to our context, and this question of narratives and what do we do with competing narratives was really what we drew out of that piece. And particularly in the question of who are we as Woodstock? And we're such a diverse, as Woodstock's profile has changed in various ways over the decades. And everybody has a perspective on what Woodstock is or what it should be. And I think I personally, and me and Jamie were having this conversation about Chris's work afterwards. One of the profound realities of the way art speaks sometimes a deeper truth, or provides us kind of a solution to things that are paradoxical. But that is that at times, and as we talk through and try to figure out what is Woodstock, with sometimes quite conflicting narratives, sometimes we just have to let it be for its beauty. We just have to let the artwork be and let the artwork express its beauty. And in a sense, that vine became that. It became less of a, is it invasive, is it not? But it's just something beautiful. And that's what we were able to celebrate with the sculptural aspect of putting the vine, setting the vine up as it was. And in many ways, carrying that then over to Woodstock, that at times, as we struggle to figure out who we are and what this is supposed to be, at times we just have to step back and say, there's something absolutely precious and incredibly valuable of that is hard to put into a box and define.
Great, thanks so much. Thank you, Stefan. So I'm also keeping an eye on the time. I know there are other events happening, and that people will want to get to, and I'm seeing that there are already some questions in the chat. So what I would maybe suggest is that we go ahead and switch to the questions, because we do really want to hear from you all, everyone who attended. So if there's extra time, maybe we'll circle back to this, but I imagine some of these other points will be addressed just in the course of the Q&A convo. So let's see, I'll just go to the chat and see what people were asking about. Or if someone has a question that they want to go ahead and raise. Sorry, I thought I saw things coming through. Okay, maybe not. Oh,
I stopped you from asking a question, I think.
No, it's okay. I think you kind of addressed it. I was more curious about Chris's reaction to witnessing the community after all this time, and how perhaps the artists would comment on not just their experiences and how they changed and how Woodstock changed, but how the community changed. I think Maddie addressed it a little bit, but I would love to hear, Chris, your viewpoint as well.
The community, as in the Hillside community, as well as Missouri.
Yeah.
I mean, that's actually interesting that you brought that up, because it's very striking to be in the bazaar and going and sitting with people, like sitting with Inam, and just saying, how's it going? And people being like, well, it's just not what it used to be. And everybody sounds like a New Yorker. They're like, yeah, it's not what it used to be. When you visually, there's a lot of incredible continuity. A lot of businesses survived the pandemic. It was very uplifting in that regard. But there's a speed and there's an intensity. There's a new wave of money coming in that is making a kind of a profound impact on the community. And there was a sense of, I think, a bit of trepidation, nervousness, and Maddie really dug into that with her project and getting into those conversations about change and about how to sustain culture. And it was the same with the school, like how are we sustaining what we know to be precious? And so we could go on and on about it, but I felt like all places change, but Missouri is really going through something right now, and but it seems like it will retain itself, and as well as the school.
Thank you.
Looks like Sam has raised his hand.
Yes. Oh, am I on? Yeah. So this is maybe in response to some of these questions about sort of engaging with the students, present students at the school. There was, I feel like a really sort of mutually enriching environment of that happening, from students dropping by into sort of into the CFI to kind of look over our shoulders, to conversations at lunchtime, and it was sort of this I feel like quite fun in a way as well, kind of getting a feel for like what's the current vibe at the school, what are things that are kind of occupying students' minds nowadays, and all of that. And I feel like we, or at least I can say for myself, it was a big takeaway having that time with the students as well, as limited as it was due to some of them having to kind of prepare for their final exams and stuff like that. But yeah, it was definitely there. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that, Sam. Oh, go for it.
Sorry. I just wanted to, 1 second, make a comment. Oh, okay. Little technical thing there. Thanks, Sam, for bringing up some of those times with the students. I know that our students were so enriched by being able to interact with the artist. Chris gave the example of the students bringing in a vine. They just brought the vine into CFI. They didn't know what they were going to do with it. They just brought it to CFI because it seemed like we could make something of it, and this was a good place. And then all of these other things came from that. As Stefan mentioned, it became, I think, really a touch point for the whole exhibition. And having those times that students got to come in and just have conversations. There were classes that were coming through CFI, and so they were able to interact with the artists on that level. And Shuvi gave a great screenwriting workshop that was really impactful, especially for some of the older students who are really interested in film. That was really a special experience for them. He gave a speech at our Festival of Ideas on the last day. And so there were a lot of ways that those interactions happened, and I'm really grateful to that. And I think we would be remiss if we didn't bring up the amazing organizational and planning work of Isaac Gergen, who really put so much of the program together, who is an expert at artist residencies with Art for Change, and just had so much input that made so much of this a success. So Isaac, I would love to hear any comments that you have too about, your thoughts about how this sort of came together and some of the outcomes.
Thank you, Jamie. Like I shared, I think even in one of our openings, it was just such an honor to be part of this creation process, to be invested with all the artists over the 2 weeks, and really be a part of the process. And the process wasn't easy. I mean, to come back after all these years, deal with nostalgia, and like Stefan was earlier mentioned, how do we make sense of all of this that we're kind of going through, and then create work on it? So the resolution that we found, it felt like a long journey, and to be part of that was really exceptional and a privilege for me. Yeah, and I think, the other thing was also that what I've said a number of times is Woodstock felt like the ecosystem of Woodstock was ready for something like this, that there's so many people, from people taking care of food to the security to, there's literally, 30, 40 people involved in different ways who made this happen. So the larger ecosystem of Woodstock, its place in Missouri, I think that played a huge role in making this a success. So that's another aspect. And also, I'd like to quickly highlight Sharon Seto, who introduced the idea of affinity groups to us, which led on to creating the Artist Affinity Group, and then which led to to this residency. And I think the success of this also means that there's a sustainability factor here that, what if we do this again next year? Well, what will it look like? And what are the ways that we can bring art to Woodstock? And there's also a comment on the chat about music. And there was, in fact, applications of artists who were doing performance arts and music and drama. So I think as we build on and create new spaces, whether with Center for Imagination or even looking at other spaces around campus, there is space for more art and music, performance art. There's a film department which wasn't there during my time. Also the interdepartmental collaborations that can happen. So a lot of really amazing potential, and we have such an amazing alumni community. I think in 2 to 3 months, we identified over 160 creatives, and that's massive, right? I mean, from filmmakers, fashion designers, artists. So yeah, it only makes sense that we come together, do amazing things up in Missouri. And so looking forward to all that's ahead with creativity at Woodstock. And then of course, how does it feed back into education, student, how can all these alumni have a direct connection with student and the curriculum and that. So yeah, lots of great opportunities, and yeah, that's all. Great seeing all of you here on this meeting. Thanks, Jamie.
I don't know if it was made clear, but Isaac is himself an amazing artist and does incredible painting work, and is wonderful to talk to as an artist. So of course he was the main organizing factor and the logistics expert, and was really extremely fast in responding to our needs. But he created work at the end as well, as did Stefan. So it really felt, and the interns as well. So it really was a much more of a than just the 7 of us.
And if I can just add one comment from the perspective of a teacher, and to this, maybe one of the questions being, who was this actually for? It definitely felt like a reunion, but it, as an art department and as CFI, we have a vision for Woodstock not just being a school that teaches art, but that really is a center for art. And much like Hannafel Center is a center that it contributes to outdoor education for Woodstock, but it also has this outward facing side to it, and it really has become a national, international leader in outdoor education. And so that kind of picture of becoming experts at something, becoming a center, a leadership center, being something that actually directly benefits students. And so in some ways in very, very profoundly, actually, this, you all may or may not know this, but an artist residency is a professional event in the art world. And so we actually kind of put Woodstock on the map by running this first official artist residency at Woodstock, and selecting professional artists. But that very much with the overarching goal was to demonstrate both the process and kind of the end product of making contemporary art to bring context to the classroom. I mean, to really expose students to these professional processes, and that's something that we're really, really thrilled about. And whether it's in the visual arts or in other areas of the arts, but to continue doing.
Stephen, no relation to the Eicher. Are you the great artist?
The probably not. Well, which great artist?
You know, the guy who did those birds that turn into fishes and
the
staircases that.
No connection, unfortunately.
That's Escher.
Escher.
Sorry, thank you for correcting me. But I thought close enough, you know.
That's right.
You know, Stefan, Jamie, and Katie and Maddie, there's a theme that's I'm really appreciating about what you did here, which is you brought great artists, but you put them in an environment that they're familiar with, they have a history with, and there's a sense of cohesion I'm detecting in all the works of art. And I love the fact that you imbued an element of community around Woodstock and Londor and around our shared emotional experiences. So I'm really appreciating what you've done here, and thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajiv. And it continues to become more rich, as just like I've noticed, you know, Chris had said that it took some while for him to unpack it and process it. And I keep hearing that in everyone's voices. Like we heard everyone, there is a YouTube link again on our channel of everyone speaking at the very end of the residency about their experience and their dialogue with Woodstock, which was also very thought-provoking and beautiful. But just to hear the new dimensions it's taking on now that people have had some time to step away and process from that 3-week, very intensive time of sucking in everything in our community. It just continues to grow and become more and more beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Rajiv.
Wonderful. So if we don't have any, or yeah, does anyone have other questions? Because I know that many of you are trying to get to the next section. So, okay, I'm not seeing any. So in that case, I'm just we have sort of a special thanks slide. So as people file out, I just wanted to share this, just a few shout outs that Isaac was kind enough to put. Oh, there were so many people involved in making this happen. We're very, very grateful. I think I speak for all of the other residents that, yeah, this was sort of a life-changing experience, just like being at Woodstock the first time around. So yeah, here are a number of people who were really essential in helping to make it happen. So thank you all so much for attending. This is actually my first reunion that I've attended. So very cool to see so many people from so many different graduation years, and we really appreciate you taking the time to engage with us on this.
Thank you so much, Maddie.
Thank you, Maddie.
Everyone.
Thank you, Maddie. You were amazing in putting all of this together.
Thank you all.
Team leader.
Thanks, Maddie. Nice to see you guys again.
Good to see everyone.
Bye. Katie just
Thanks,
says bye.
Yeah, thanks from me too. I got kicked offline on my computer. Sorry.